Time to break down Keith Sanchez's top 10 quarterbacks of the 2024 NFL Draft. J.J. McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan, is over the Heisman winner Jayden Daniels at QB3. We're going to talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL, my national scout and the senior draft analyst. And as always, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And guys, I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man. And the other side to this dynamic duo that we call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we talk everything college football, we talk everything NFL football, and like we like to say, it all starts with the NFL Draft. And DP, a part of the NFL Draft is QB rankings, man. And today, I am on the hot seat, man. My QB rankings have dropped over there on the Draft Network, man. And we're going to break down, and DP already broke it down a little bit. So we're going to have a really good conversation about a couple of these quarterbacks in the top 5, but we're going to break down the entire top 10. But DP, before we get started with the QB rankings, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, guys, let's take a look at Keith Sanchez's 2024 top 10 QB rankings. And, of course, number 1, Caleb Williams. Number 2, Drake Maye. So USC, North Carolina. But let's scroll a little bit. We got number 3 from Michigan, J.J. McCarthy, and the Heisman winner, his own LSU Bengal Tiger, Jayden Daniels, at 4. The guy won the Heisman. Keith, talk to us. What went into this process of putting J.J. McCarthy at 3 over Jayden Daniels?
DP, I know this is going to shock a lot of people, man, but it's always fun. And it's important to add context and conversation, right, to what you've seen on film and what my thought process was, right, with the bigger picture. Watching Jayden Daniels, DP, there's a lot to like about him, right? And I actually had this conversation with a couple of scouts down at the Senior Bowl, a couple of NFL scouts down at the Senior Bowl, right? And was talking about Jayden Daniels, the player, right? And the guy that's a explosive runner, right? A guy that has really good deep ball accuracy. But the other parts are operating, 1, from under center, right? And then 2, throwing in the middle of the field with those layer throws. Now, the conversation was like, okay, well, why J.J. McCarthy? Because J.J. has been so bad, right? When I watched the Michigan tape, DP, and we've talked about it, right? Whether that's Michigan State, I believe Rutgers was a good game, and there was a couple good games before. I seen a guy with extreme arm talent, right? With extreme arm talent, he can go 5 wide, he can go under center. I think he can make throws at all levels of the field. And you say, okay, well, why J.J. McCarthy over Jayden Daniels? I think the conversation is that we as talent evaluators, right, we kind of get put in a weird spot because as we evaluate the talent, we don't get to pick everything. Like yesterday, we had the conversation about Caleb Williams, right? And if you tell me Caleb Williams is going to go with Cliff Kingsbury, right, with those wide receivers that they have with the Commanders, then I say, okay, I feel really good about it. Now, that's my J.J. McCarthy, Jayden Daniels conversation. Where does Jayden go, right? I don't know if he do. I don't know if you feel like this, but I don't think he's offensive coordinator proof, right? So when I went into these rankings, it's like, okay, what offense or offenses are more popular in the NFL, right? And it's not one that's necessarily suited for Lamar Jackson. We've had this Lamar Jackson conversation, right? There are plenty of offensive coordinators, I believe, DP, that would have took Lamar Jackson and ruined him, right? Look at Jalen Hurts, right? Just how important Jalen Hurts, what's our guy in Indianapolis right now?
Shane Steichen.
Shane Steichen, right? Look how important he was to the growth and development of Jalen Hurts and the style of quarterback he is. So this kind of went off of more of who's, I guess, proof, right? Like who has a higher chance of the NFL potentially not messing it up. I do love what Jayden Daniels could be, but I also look at some of the things that I need to see him to do, and I don't know if an NFL coordinator is going to get that right. And that's kind of where it falls to me. Like I want to know what the situation. Like I know New England, right? They need a playmaker, they need a baller, but it's like, okay, who are y'all bringing in that's going to allow Jayden Daniels to use his legs? That's going to have those style plays, right? The RPOs, the QB options, the QB powers, QB counters, right? And then make the reads, right? Because when you watch the film, Jayden Daniels is a one read, two read, get up out of there and run with my legs, right? And I just want to see how that process is going to unfold. And then also on top of this, DP, Jayden was throwing to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. I don't think there's a Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas in New England, right? So what is that process going to be like? So I'm going to toss it back to you just after that conversation and tell me how you feel about that.
No, I mean the explanation makes a lot of sense, right? And I give you that credit. I think the counter for me is like, all right, and I agree.
Go ahead, counter it. Go ahead, counter. I want to hear this conversation.
Yeah, let's I counter it with because we talk about like what, especially like New England, right? The receivers not having the Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., stuff like that. Well, I'll also argue like, yeah, they can run the ball, but they don't have the dominant run game that Michigan had. That also made like JJ McCarthy's life easy. You know what I mean? Going under center, that heavy play action, dictating the roll coverage from the safeties and stuff like that. And I think I love JJ McCarthy. I love both of these guys. And I think for me, it's like, all right now, when I look at JJ McCarthy, I see a young man that's still developing with his reads, right? Like going like speed and timing through his progressions. He'll still stick and stay stuck on a read, and it take a little too long to like. And he's young, right? It's different from people think I like to take shots at Will Levis. I don't, but it's the easiest one for me to kind of bring.
Sometimes you do. It feels like you do.
It's the easiest one for me to go to. Will Levis was like a 2-year starter, had plenty of snaps, was playing in college for 4 years or whatever it was, 4 or 5 years, right? But he was a guy that would stare down reads and not come off of it. And then like people blame the offensive line that he got hit. Well, if you don't come off the read, you're 24 years old, man. You can't keep doing this. But JJ's 20. So I know that the upside is high, but I just think like with that, it's like, all right, there's some deficiencies in his game right now that even the right coach needs to be able to nurture that to mature his game going into the NFL where like, and don't get me wrong, I think, and what makes it fascinating is because he's also athletic. Is he 4'3" athletic like Jayden Daniels might be? No, but he's probably 4'5", which is plenty fast enough, right? I just think Jayden Daniels is such the ultimate weapon at the quarterback position when you're talking about being able to make the plays with his legs, but they're all having the arm talent to make those throws. I think the middle of the field throws is going to be interesting because I think who's the Patriots offensive coordinator is Alex Van Pelt. So he spent time in like Green Bay, Cincinnati back in like 2018, 2019. He spent time with the Browns even this year when they had Deshaun Watson, Sean, PJ, DTR, and then Joe Flacco. So he's got a vast network of experience with different style quarterbacks, right? Knowing because PJ and DTR are more guys that use their legs. Deshaun can use his legs as well. I think he'll be a fit for Jayden Daniels. I think for me, it's like, all right, I think Jayden can make, he has the arm talent to make those throws, right? Like in the middle of the field and really put it over those defenders. Yep. I think the question I have is like, why isn't he? Like, is it more of a comfort thing where it's like, you know what? Yeah, having the offense coordinator just like, hey, make the throw. Like, you've seen it, right? In practice, bro, throw it in the middle of the field. I don't care if it's a pick. I want you to get comfortable hitting in this range in this area of the field. Because if you think about Jalen Hurts, he wasn't a great middle of the field thrower. He was more of a vertical passer himself. I think that as a natural passer, I'll take Jayden over what Hurts was coming out of college.
Yeah, and I think even with that conversation, right? You remember, well, not remember, it still goes on. Like the next gen stats, and they chart the quarterback throws, right? And I've never seen Jayden Daniels next gen
Oh
stats or
yeah,
anything like that, right?
throw sheet
But I
or
just
chart.
feel like it would be perimeter stuff and deep stuff, right? Like all the
Mhm.
dots would be on the perimeters and be deep. And that's just the part that I want to see, right? And obviously they're still early in the process, and you know, the situation is a fluid situation, DP. I think it'll be things like, okay, what if Jayden runs a 4-5 flat or 4-4-8, and then JJ McCarthy runs a 4-5-2, right? I think
Yeah.
that the conversations are going to start being this close once you actually kind of pull back the layers, right? Because even when you watch JJ McCarthy DP to do his deep dive, I think that you came away more impressed than you expected to in some of the games. And this is not me saying I don't like Jayden Daniels. Like I said, I feel like Jayden Daniels. I feel like JJ McCarthy, right? It's the situation that's going to matter. And I think when you rank quarterbacks and when you rank players, period, right, it kind of becomes, are they what? Who's the most situation proof guy, right? It becomes that. And I think that's why we see the variance in quarterback play, right? 1 year, Dak Prescott is throwing 15, 16 interceptions. Next year, people are talking about him as an NFL MVP, right? As throwing the football at quarterback. So we're going to get those variants in conversation. But DP, as much as I want to continue that conversation, I think we need to continue with the list, right? And have some more really good conversations surrounding these quarterback races, especially post Senior Bowl, right? We just watched some of these guys throw live. So I think it'd be really good just to continue to have this conversation. So coming up next, man, we're going to start this thing off with QB5 and then keep it rolling.
Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Even wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The Nissan Pathfinder has room up to 8 and expensive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capabilities with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Classic exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, guys. Keith, you know, we're still in the hot seat at QB5. Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. At QB6, one of my guys, Spencer Rattler out of South Carolina. And at QB7, Bo Nix out of Oregon. Keith, talk to me about Spence. Now, you made this list. I want to let people know this list was made prior to the Senior Bowl. This isn't a reaction based off of how good Spencer was. He was clearly QB1 down in Mobile all last week. So why was Spencer over Bo Nix? And does he have a shot for you to jump Michael Penix Jr.?
Yeah, I think he has a real shot to do it. And I think the real shot is just him keeping his head down and going through the process. And I want to tell everybody, right, because obviously if you listen to us every day, right, shout out to our everydayers, you know that heading into the Senior Bowl, Spencer Rattler was one of those guys that we were like, hey, watch out for this guy, because if he's put in a better setting than what he is at South Carolina, he could perform better, and which he did, right? And I think as he goes through the process, the combine, you know, the measurements, the interviews, I think he's going to start to create buzz. And then the biggest thing is the pro day, right? Because the pro day is tailored to your skill set and what you do best as a prospect. I think he's one of those guys that can hit it out the park. Now, right, because he's at number 6. Michael Penix Jr. is at number 5. I would be close to saying, okay, let's flip these guys. But DP, I have to be honest, I did like what I seen from Michael Penix, and we talked about it already, was the under the center stuff, right? And I think they're kind of going to be jockeying for that QB5 position, I think, throughout the rest of this. And I think that you kind of have tiers. I would put the separation. There's Jayden Daniels at number 4, right? And then I do think there's the next tier, and I think that tier of quarterbacks that's by themselves is Michael Penix Jr. and Spencer Rattler, right? But I think those are guys that you're sitting, and we just talked about situations, right? You put them in good situations, and now I feel the same exact way, DP. You give me that McVay, that Shanahan style offense. I think both of these guys can get the job done. And when you watch Spencer, right, I think Spencer is even more versatile. And this is why somebody could sell me on bumping Spencer up. I think Spencer has better answers for pressure, right? When he's getting pressure, he looked in there's something at Oklahoma, right? He looked confused and out of wax, and it wasn't necessarily the same guy, but it's weird because he went to a worse situation in South Carolina. But I thought that he got more comfortable in chaos, right? I think it was plays against Florida, and I can't remember. They might have been the Georgia game also, where he had immediate pressure, but I didn't see his process get sped up. He's like, okay, I'm used to this. Here's my answer right here, right? And so that would be the conversation. I think there's going to be some jockeying back and forth for Michael Penix Jr. and Spencer Rattler. And I wouldn't be surprised if Spencer Rattler continues to etch up the board. And you're talking about top end of the second round, back into the first round conversation where some team wants to take a gamble on him. You're sitting there looking at a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
No, 100%. What I love about, like you said, he went to a worse situation. He went to the SEC, which is typically known to be the more athletic. It's like the bullets are flying in all these conferences, but in the SEC, the bullets are flying a little bit faster than the Big 12, right? So he was able to adapt. Where I watched Bo Nix, at Auburn in the SEC, and when he was pressured, everything went haywire. Throwing mechanics, footwork, decision making. And I saw the same thing at Auburn. He wasn't pressured a ton, but when you got pressure on him, like Washington, when they were like in those 2 games they played in 2023 this past year, the Pac-12 championship game, then the meeting in the middle early in the season, whenever they were able to get into the backfield and make him uncomfortable, you could tell he was uncomfortable, right? And then he's coming off a Senior Bowl where he wasn't great, right? Talking about Bo Nix.
No, I was going to say, DP, I had the quote the other day, right? I said, Bo Nix is a canvas with a lot of paint on it, and you just don't know what the picture is. Yes. And leaving a Senior Bowl, I'm not even sure it's a canvas, right? I'm a little bit more confused at the end of the day, right? Like, and it's because it didn't give us any answers, right? Like, I'm not sure exactly how to go about it and how to move forward, with the Bo Nix conversation, because, like you said, it was the deep ball, trying to deep ball. It kind of worked, it didn't work, right? Dumping off in the flats, and then the middle of the field type situation, and not just saying that he has to drop straight back and throw it in the middle of the field, but even those bootleg play action type situations, right? And then you kind of hitting that second level defender, not the guy in the flat. It was still conversations of that too. It's like, is he willing to try it and test it to kind of squeeze it in the window? Because you did see Michael Penix run that same exact play, and he let that bad boy rip in between 2 defenders, right? And that's kind of, I think, what the conversation is with Bo Nix.
Yeah, I would also say, like, because I think Spence had the most impressive throw of the week, and that was that throw to Jamari Thrash. At the
that was a big
line.
boy throw.
That tight coverage from DJ James, the cornerback from Auburn. And you're talking about ball placement, accuracy, arm talent. Then, of course, the touchdown to Marcus Rosemary Jack Saint, I think it's his name. I think that's how you say it. Like from Georgia in the actual game, right? And then and what I saw, like you said, the style of offense, I think Spence proved, bro, I can run the pro style stuff, the under center, play action, get to the flats, get it to the first read, get it to the open guy. But also, when you want to take that deep shot and you give me that opportunity, that money shot, once I get to the 50 or cross the 50 to the opposing 45, and we want to put 1st and 10, play action or straight drop back, you know what I mean, and throw it, and he can work the RPO game. Just the creativity and the ability to negotiate pressure is why he was, because and this was straight off of the film. Even before last week, I had Spence graded a little bit higher than Bo Nix. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl, and he outperforms Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. So I'm 100% agree with you. He played in the game, and I just felt like he was the most locked-in QB all week. Well, every time I saw him, like, yeah, you'll see Mosey, he's dancing, he's vibing, but then you see like this stoic look on his face, like, I'm here for business. Like, even when he made a mistake, he's like, you can see him kind of talking to himself, like, all right, that's on me. That's my bad. And then he'll come back and correct it the next throw or the next, next opportunity. So it's going to be interesting to see how the combine is going to be big for, 5 and 6, Keith. 5 for the medicals, 6 for the interviews, because they're going to be, people are still trying to hold Spencer Rattler to the 17-year-old kid from that Netflix series, and not realizing that, hey man, like you're 38 now, guys. Like, are you the same person you were at 35, at 30? No, you've matured, you've grown up. So allow him to grow up too, and give him the credit for doing so.
DP, I would argue 3 through 7, right? Because with talking about JJ McCarthy, Jayden Daniels, Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler, and Bo Nix, there's more because you want to see the athletic testing, right? How athletic are these guys? But then also, DP, unlike the Senior Bowl, right? They're just going to be like, and I know it's the conversation, oh, they're just throwing in shirts in shorts, right? But we haven't just seen Jayden Daniels just drop back and rip it to all levels of the field, just go at it, right? And you're like, okay, see that arm talent, right? Then follow that up with Michael Penix and Spencer Rattler to where, listen, we know that this is a deep post, right? You got to let this rip. Let's see how the ball looks. So I think that's going to be a fun conversation, right? The comeback, hey, that's already in there. You got to throw that. So I think it's still going to be fun just to see these guys throw. But DP, listen, that's guys 1 through 7, right? When it goes to the QB rankings. But let's round out this list, man. We said it's a deep quarterback class, and that it is. So let's round out this list with quarterbacks ranked 8 through 10, and then we're going to have a conversation just to wrap this thing up.
Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, claim as of Q1 of 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. All right, guys, let's bring this thing home. And as always, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And like you said, we're going to run through the last 3. At number 8, QB8, Joe Milton, the third out of Tennessee. QB9, Michael Pratt out of Tulane. And the shocker for me, QB10, Jordan Travis from Florida State. Keith, Joe Milton. All right, like I think this is the one that's probably gonna catch people. Like, there's people probably like, man, he's not even a top 10 quarterback, right? Especially after like the inconsistencies we saw down in Mobile. So factoring in what we saw in Mobile, us being on the sideline, on the field, up close and personal. We spent some time with the young man as well. Keith, is he still a top 10 QB for you?
DP, this is probably the first guy that we got to that post Senior Bowl, because like we said, I made this right before the Senior Bowl. Made this list right before the Senior Bowl, right? And I was thinking, I'm like, man, I'm probably gonna have a lot to shuffle around with Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix, right? And then I looked at it and I'm like, nah, I'm kind of okay with this, right? Like even post Senior Bowl, but Joe Milton sitting at 8. I'm a little bit more confused on this one too, because you see the flashes once again, right? But then you see it's the good Joe, bad Joe type of situation, right? Where you just I don't know, DP. I don't know. And the conversation is I almost like the game film more than what I liked seeing at the Senior Bowl, to be completely honest. I seen some high level throws on game film. So we talked about this a couple of days ago. It's like how much, percentage wise do you let alter, that conversation? And then also this is the other thing, DP, is that, okay, cool. I moved Joe Milton down from number 8, right? Am I bumping Michael Pratt up? Right? Am I bumping Jordan Travis up? Because Jordan Travis' process on film, we've seen what his process looks like, right? Michael Pratt, I would say potentially, we know that he didn't have a great Senior Bowl. It was not a good showing for him at all. So the question is this: if it's not Joe, then who, right? And I think that's kind of where I bump up to with as far as the rankings and the QB rankings. And like I said, I think the film is still decent enough to kind of I guess, kind of go with. The one guy would be Jordan Travis, but I think Jordan Travis is probably more of a gamer, and you have to watch the game film than what you're going to actually get out of a Senior Bowl setting or a combine setting or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's like, and you make a good point, Keith, because again, you look at Michael Pratt. Are you moving Michael Pratt up? Michael Pratt had a really rough week in Mobile,
Yeah.
and even going to with Joe, it's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in a sense where you see the good and then you see the bad, and it's like, man, if I could just consistently get more of the good, because even in the game, right, in the actual Senior Bowl game, after Spencer had the touchdown drive and then the second drive, I think they brought Joe in, and Joe was like first drive or two, he was orchestrating the offense, man, layering the ball, taking some of that sting, pulling the string on it, taking some of the RPMs and velocity off his, because he's got the best arm. It's not even, I'll be honest, it's not even close. Like, nobody has an arm in this class close to Joe Milton. You're talking about power, velocity, range. Like, no one has the effortless arm that Joe Milton has, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to watch him kind of be cognizant of that in the game, I felt like he was making good decisions early on. I remember he had like a 7 route to, I think it was a tight end, fitted over the defense into the tight zone window. And I was like, okay, Joe, let's go. But then you see the mistakes. He's rolling out. You know what I mean? I think it was like 1st and 10. And Joe's a 4.5, 4.6 guy at worst. Yep. And it's like, Joe, you could just scamper for this. Go get the first down or get as many yards as possible with your legs and duck out of bounds. I felt like it was I got to make a play to rectify some of the things I did this week. And he threw it across his body to a running back at that, who's drifting deeper in the back of the end zone instead of sitting. Then it was crazy because I remember watching, I think it was Cody Schrader. He threw his hand up. Remember how Isaiah Likely and double coverage looked at Lamar like, yo, trust me, bro. I'm got it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's like, maybe I shouldn't trust your hand being up. Maybe you shouldn't throw your hand up in this situation. But Joe tries to make a crossbody throw, and Evan Williams, the safety from Oregon, who we spent time with, great dude, comes up with the great interception. But it's like those plays, right? The final interception, I think, when they were trying to make a comeback, and it felt like it was a miscommunication between Joe and the receiver. He threw the ball, receiver's kind of not running full speed. Defense just is right there, makes a play on it, and stuff like that. And it's just like, man, the inconsistency is there, but I still think that he's probably going to be at worst a late 3rd or early 4th round pick because of the tools, and the teams feel like he's not a problem in the locker room. He is a smart, intelligent. We spent time with him. He's a smart, intelligent dude. He could talk ball and he's coachable. So it's like, all right, get him with the right situation and just see what you have there. But it's going to be interesting, Keith, because I just don't know what happens with Pratt. Like, after the display in Mobile, I don't know where to land on Michael Pratt right now.
Yeah, no, I think it's, and even going back to the list, right? I feel comfortable with saying Bo Nix, Joe Milton, Michael Pratt, Jordan Travis. You probably drafting them and sitting them, right, for a year. Like, that's probably what I would do. And I'm just advocate. I know it's 2 different trains of thoughts, right? It's like, oh, get them out there as soon as possible. But I just feel like what you just described with Joe Milton, right? With making the mistakes that don't have to be made and then trying to rectify them. And then Bo Nix, with his situation with, the Auburn being really bad and then the Oregon being being good and being in that context is like, then Michael Pratt, right, and Jordan Travis. I just feel like draft those guys, sit them. If you feel like you have a good QB coach, if you feel like you have a great, coach or organization, then maybe these guys can develop into starters. So that's how I kind of feel, you're talking about breaking down the back half of the list. In those first 6, I feel like, look, you give them a good situation, I think you could potentially get really good things out of the first 6 quarterbacks. But DP, that wraps up, man, my QB rankings, man. And listen, I'm going to tell it every day, man, if you listen to this podcast, if you can hear my voice, man, go ahead, jump on YouTube and comment, right? Let us know how you feel about the QB ranks and whether you would switch JJ McCarthy and Jayden Daniels. How do you feel about the conversation that we had about those 2 guys, man? But listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there, that is my co-host, man. Damian Parson, you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all talk to us because we like to talk back.
Guys, go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers, man. And we have much more content for the rest of this week, man. And we're going to get into more and more things. We got this or that coming up. You got this or that tomorrow. Coach them up, Keith. We got some guys that's talented, but they need to be coached up. So we're going to bring that. We're going to talk to these coaches on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.